The smell of smoke still clings to my clothes as I tell you this story. Not from a fire, from watching my brother's entire world burn down around him. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold. They're wrong. The sweetest revenge is the kind that simmers for months, planned with surgical precision, then ignites everything in one perfect moment of truth. My name is Sarah, and 2 years ago, my golden boy brother Marcus stole my inheritance while I held my dying father's hand. What he didn't know was that I'm very, very good at keeping records. And I'm even better at waiting. Before I tell you how I systematically dismantled my brother's perfect life, piece by piece, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button if you've ever been betrayed by family. Subscribe if you believe in justice. And stick around, because this story has more twists than a DNA test at a family reunion. The funny thing about being the difficult daughter is that everyone expects you to cause problems. What they don't expect is for you to solve them with the cold efficiency of an accountant and the patience of a predator. I should start at the beginning, back when I still believed my family loved me. Growing up, Marcus was everything I wasn't. Star quarterback, student body president, the son who brought home report cards that got stuck to the refrigerator with little gold star magnets. I was the daughter who asked too many questions, who wouldn't smile on command for family photos, who had the audacity to major in forensic accounting instead of something more suitable for a young lady. Mom never said it outright, but I could see it in her eyes every Christmas morning. Marcus was the gift that kept on giving. I was the sweater that didn't quite fit. When Dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, I didn't hesitate. I took a leave of absence from my job in Chicago and moved back to that suffocating little town where everyone still remembered me as Marcus's difficult sister. For 2 years, I became his caretaker. I managed his medications, 17 different pills, 3 times a day. I drove him to chemo sessions in a sterile hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. I held his hand while he threw up everything he'd tried to eat. Marcus? Marcus sent flowers. Expensive ones, always with cards that read, "Thinking of you, Dad. Love, Marcus and Jennifer." Jennifer was his wife, perfect Jennifer with her perfect blonde highlights and her perfect little laugh that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Marcus would call monthly, his voice carrying the practiced regret of someone with better things to do. "Sorry, I can't be there more, sis. A big merger is happening at the firm. You know how it is." I knew how it was. I knew exactly how it was. Dad and I had long conversations during those quiet afternoons when the pain medication made him philosophical. He told me about his regrets, his pride in both his children, and his plans for after he was gone. Dad's voice was a weak but determined one on Tuesday while we watched game shows. The house, the business, all of it. Split it right down the middle. You've both earned it in different ways. Dad, don't talk like that. His grip tightened on my hand with surprising strength. Sarah, honey, I need you to know. 50-50. I've told the lawyer, I've told your mother. Everything fair and square. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The funeral was on a Thursday. Marcus gave a beautiful eulogy about what a wonderful father we'd had, how Dad had taught him the value of hard work and family loyalty. People cried. I cried. Even perfect Jennifer dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. 3 days later, I was cleaning out Dad's desk when I found it, the real will, dated 6 months before he died. Everything split exactly as he'd promised. Sarah Caldwell and Marcus Caldwell, equal inheritors of the Caldwell estate, valued at approximately $400,000. I felt this strange sense of relief. Despite everything, Dad had kept his word. Then came the reading. Mr. Peterson, Dad's lawyer for 30 years, cleared his throat and began reading from what he called the final will and testament. I sat there, hands folded, waiting to hear my name. I never did. According to the document Peterson read, Marcus Caldwell was the sole beneficiary of everything. The house where I'd spent 2 years caring for our dying father. The small accounting firm Dad had built from nothing. The savings account. Even Dad's car. I wasn't mentioned once. Not even a family photo or a piece of jewelry. I had been erased as thoroughly as if I'd never existed. My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from underwater. That can't be right. Peterson shuffled through his papers with obvious discomfort. I'm sorry, Sarah. This is the will your father executed 4 months ago. He said he'd reconsidered his earlier decisions. I looked at Marcus. My brother, the person who'd barely visited, who'd sent flowers instead of showing up, who'd let me carry the weight of watching our father die, was avoiding my eyes. My voice cracked with disbelief. Marcus? You knew about this? He finally looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in my big brother's face. Guilt. Raw, unmistakable guilt. Marcus spoke quietly, still not meeting my eyes. Dad must have had his reasons. Maybe he thought I was more responsible with money. The words hit me like a physical blow. Responsible. After everything I'd done, every sacrifice I'd made, every time I'd put my life on hold to make sure Dad wasn't alone, I was the irresponsible one. I managed to keep my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Marcus, I need to speak with you privately. We stepped into Peterson's hallway. I could hear the tick of an old clock and the distant sound of traffic through windows that hadn't been cleaned in years. I whispered with desperate hope. Tell me you didn't know. Marcus ran his hand through his perfectly styled hair, a gesture I remembered from childhood, when he was about to lie to Mom about breaking something. His voice carried the weight of someone who'd been practicing this explanation. Sarah, Dad called me a few months ago. He was worried about your job situation, about you being so far from home. He thought maybe the house and the business should go to someone who was more settled. The word tasted like poison in my mouth. Settled. I was taking care of him, Marcus. Every day for 2 years. Marcus's attempt at damage control was pathetic. I know, and we're all grateful. I laughed, and it sounded like breaking glass. Grateful. You're grateful. That night, I sat in my empty apartment, the same apartment I'd planned to give up because I thought I'd be inheriting Dad's house, and I realized something that would change everything. My brother was a liar. But more than that, he was a stupid liar. Because Marcus had forgotten something important about his difficult little sister. I'm a forensic accountant. I specialize in finding money that people are trying to hide. And I'm very, very good at my job. It took me 3 months to uncover the truth, working nights and weekends with the methodical precision that had made me successful in my career. I started with public records, then moved to financial databases, then finally to the darker corners of the internet where people go when they need to hide things. Marcus wasn't just living beyond his means, he was living beyond anyone's means. The perfect house in the perfect neighborhood? Mortgage to the hilt. The luxury cars? Leased with payments that should have been impossible on his salary. Perfect, Jennifer's designer clothes and jewelry? All were purchased with credit cards that were maxed out and climbing. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what I found when I dug deeper into his employment records. My perfect brother, the golden boy who'd never put a foot wrong, had been embezzling from his law firm for 2 years. Small amounts at first, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. Amounts that could be explained as filing errors or accounting mistakes. But as his gambling debts grew, so did the thefts. Online poker, sports betting, even some high-stakes games in private clubs downtown. Marcus had developed a habit that was eating him alive, and he was feeding it with stolen money. The timeline was sickening in its clarity. The embezzlement had started right around the time Dad got sick. While I was sacrificing my career to take care of our father, Marcus was stealing to support his addiction. And when that wasn't enough, when the walls started closing in, he'd manipulated a dying man into changing his will. I sat in my apartment at 2 a.m, surrounded by spreadsheets and bank records and credit reports, and I felt something I'd never felt before. It wasn't anger. Anger was too hot, too immediate. This was something colder. Something that felt like destiny. Marcus had always been the favorite. He'd always gotten the praise, the attention, the benefit of the doubt. Even when we were kids, if something went wrong, I was the one who got blamed. Sarah, why did you let your brother do that? Sarah, you should have known better. Sarah, you're older, you should be more responsible. Well, I was about to be very responsible indeed. The beauty of systematic destruction is that it looks like random bad luck from the outside. Marcus never saw it coming because he was so busy trying to keep his house of cards from falling that he couldn't see the earthquake I was creating beneath the foundation. I started with Jennifer. Perfect Jennifer, who thought her husband was a successful lawyer with a bright future and a generous father-in-law who'd left them financially secure. Jennifer, who had no idea that her dream life was built on stolen money and lies. I spent weeks learning her routine. Coffee at Starbucks every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 a.m. Yoga class on Monday evenings. grocery shopping alone on Saturday mornings while Marcus played golf, or at least, while he told her he was playing golf. The approach had to be perfect. Too direct, and she'd run straight to Marcus. Too subtle, and she might dismiss what I was telling her. I needed her to discover the truth in a way that felt like her own realization. I finally made my move on a Thursday morning in October. Jennifer was at her usual table at Starbucks, scrolling through her phone while sipping a skinny vanilla latte. I'd been watching her for weeks, learning her habits, waiting for the perfect moment. I approached her table with the hesitant smile of someone who wasn't quite sure if they'd recognized the right person. "Jennifer?" "Jennifer Caldwell." She looked up, confused for a moment, then recognition dawned. Her voice carried the bright surprise of unexpected social interaction. "Sarah. Oh my God, hi. I didn't expect to see you here." Of course, she didn't. In her world, I'd faded back into whatever irrelevant corner difficult sisters retire to after family funerals. I smiled with practiced uncertainty. "I was hoping I might run into you. I've been meaning to call. There's something I need to discuss with you about Dad's estate." A shadow crossed her perfect features. "Oh. Is there a problem?" I glanced around the coffee shop, playing up the discomfort. "Could we maybe go somewhere more private? It's a bit sensitive." 20 minutes later, we were sitting in Jennifer's pristine living room, the living room that my inheritance had helped pay for, and I was watching her world crumble in real time. I didn't tell her about the embezzlement. Not yet. Instead, I showed her the real will, the one I'd found in Dad's desk. I watched her face as she read the words that made it clear Marcus had inherited everything through deception. Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper as she processed what she was reading. "I don't understand. Marcus said your father changed his mind because you were living so far away, because you weren't as settled." "Jennifer, I spent 2 years taking care of my father while Marcus visited maybe 6 times. The will was changed 4 months before Dad died, while Dad was on heavy pain medication and not always coherent." I could see her mind working, processing the implications. Jennifer might have looked like a trophy wife, but she hadn't gotten her business degree by being stupid. Her voice carried growing suspicion. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying my brother manipulated our dying father into cutting me out of the will. And I'm wondering what else he might have lied to you about." I pulled out my phone and showed her the first document, a credit report I'd obtained through less than legal means. Marcus had 14 credit cards, all maxed out. The monthly payments alone were more than most people's mortgages. Jennifer went very quiet. I spoke gently, like someone delivering bad news to a friend. "There's more. And I think you deserve to know." Over the next hour, I watched perfect Jennifer discover that her perfect life was an elaborate fiction. The gambling. The debts. The money that had been disappearing from their joint accounts, money she'd assumed was going toward investments for their future. But I saved the best for last. My voice took on a concerned, almost therapeutic tone. "Jennifer, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Has Marcus been working late a lot recently? Taking weekend trips for work? Staying at the office overnight?" She nodded slowly, her voice becoming uncertain. "The big Morrison case. He said it was make or break for his partnership track." "There is no Morrison case." I showed her the final piece of evidence, bank records showing Marcus's gambling losses, tied to times when he'd told her he was working. Hotel receipts for nights he'd claimed to be at the office. ATM withdrawals from casinos during hours when he should have been in court. Jennifer didn't cry. That's what surprised me most. Instead, she got very calm, very cold. She reminded me of myself in that moment. Her voice was steady, analytical. "How long have you known?" "About the gambling?" "A few weeks." "About the inheritance?" "Since the day of the will reading." Jennifer's eyes hardened with cold calculation. "Why are you telling me this?" I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. "Because you deserve better than being married to a liar and a thief. And because I want my brother to face the consequences of his choices." Jennifer was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady with newfound resolve. "What do you need me to do?" What I needed her to do was simple: start paying attention. Check the accounts she'd never bothered to monitor. Ask questions about his whereabouts. Look at their financial situation with clear eyes instead of trusting eyes. What I didn't expect was how quickly she'd uncover evidence I'd missed. 2 weeks later, Jennifer called me. Her voice was different, harder, more focused. Jennifer's words came out in a rush of controlled fury. Sarah, we need to meet. I found something. This time, we met at a small cafe across town. Jennifer looked like she hadn't slept in days, but there was something new in her posture. A kind of angry energy that reminded me of myself. She spoke without preamble, her voice tight with rage. He's been stealing from the firm. Not just skimming, actual embezzlement. Hundreds of thousands of dollars over 2 years. She showed me bank statements, credit card records, even photographs she'd taken of documents in Marcus's home office. Perfect Jennifer had turned into an investigator overnight. Her voice grew harder with each revelation. There's more. He's been taking money from our joint accounts to pay gambling debts. Money I thought was going toward our mortgage, our retirement fund. Sarah, we're broke. Worse than broke, we're in debt up to our eyeballs, and now I know why. What are you going to do? Jennifer's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I'm going to divorce him. But first, I'm going to make sure his law firm knows exactly what kind of man they've been trusting with their clients' money. The beautiful thing about watching a house of cards collapse is that once you remove the right card, gravity does most of the work for you. Marcus's law firm moved fast once Jennifer provided them with evidence of the embezzlement. Apparently, they'd been having some concerns about discrepancies in their trust accounts, but Marcus had always been able to explain them away. When presented with Jennifer's documentation, the explanation became clear. The partners called an emergency meeting on a Friday afternoon. By Monday morning, Marcus Caldwell was no longer employed at Brennan, Walsh and Associates. By Tuesday, the district attorney's office had opened an investigation. By Wednesday, Marcus's assets were frozen pending the outcome of the criminal case. I watched all of this unfold from my apartment in Chicago, where I'd returned to my job and my life. Jennifer kept me updated with the efficiency of a war correspondent. She seemed to take genuine pleasure in documenting her husband's downfall. But it wasn't enough. Not for me. Marcus had stolen more than money from me. He'd stolen my father's last gift, the security Dad had wanted me to have, the knowledge that I'd been valued and remembered. He'd erased me from my own family history, and now he needed to understand what that felt like. I took another leave of absence and moved back home. The house, my house, the one that should have been mine, was already on the market. Jennifer had filed for divorce and was liquidating everything she could to pay the legal fees and restitution demands. She'd moved back in with her parents, a fact that I imagined was killing Marcus more than the criminal charges. Marcus himself was staying in a studio apartment above the hardware store downtown. The same building where old Mr. Henderson used to rent to college kids and people down on their luck. The irony was almost poetic. I rented a house 3 blocks away and began the final phase of my plan. The confrontation I'd been planning for months happened on a Tuesday evening in November. I'd been watching Marcus's routine for weeks, learning his new life the way I'd once learned Jennifer's. He worked at a collections agency now, the only job he could get with his legal troubles pending. He came home every night at 6:15, picked up Chinese takeout from Wong's kitchen, and spent his evenings alone in that pathetic little apartment. I was waiting for him in the parking lot behind the hardware store. My voice cut through the evening air with deliberate calm. "Hello, Marcus." He nearly dropped his bag of lo mein when he saw me. In the 6 months since his world had collapsed, my golden boy brother had aged about 10 years. His hair was going gray at the temples, his perfect teeth were yellowed from the chain-smoking habit he'd apparently developed, and his expensive suits had been replaced by off-the-rack clothes that hung on his diminished frame. Marcus's voice was hoarse with exhaustion and fear. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "I came home to see how you're adjusting to your new circumstances." Marcus looked around nervously, as if he expected photographers to jump out from behind the dumpster. The criminal case had made the local papers, and in a town this size, everyone knew everyone's business. His voice carried defensive desperation. "If you came here to gloat, I came here to talk to you about Dad." Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or just exhaustion. Marcus's words came out in a rehearsed rush. "Sarah, I know you're angry about the will, but Dad made his own choices." My voice cut through the November air like a blade. "Stop. Just stop lying. We both know what really happened." Marcus leaned against his beat-up Honda, a far cry from the BMW he'd been driving a year ago. His voice was small, defeated. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to tell me the truth. Just once in your life, I want you to tell me the truth." For a long moment, The only sound was the distant hum of traffic on Main Street. Then Marcus did something I'd never seen him do before in 34 years of knowing him. He broke down. Marcus's voice cracked with the weight of months of suppressed guilt. I was desperate. The gambling, the debts. I was going to lose everything. Jennifer would have left me. The firm would have found out. I thought if I could just buy some time, if I could get the inheritance to pay off the worst of it. So you manipulated our dying father. Marcus's voice rose in desperate justification. He was confused half the time anyway. The medication, the pain, he wasn't thinking clearly. I convinced him that you were better off without the burden of the house and the business. That you had your own life in Chicago. You erased me from his will while I was giving him his medication and holding his hand and making sure he wasn't alone. Marcus buried his face in his hands, his voice muffled by shame. I know. God, Sarah, I know what I did. Do you think I don't know? I think you're only sorry because you got caught. I pulled out an envelope from my jacket and handed it to him. Marcus looked at it like it might explode. His voice was barely a whisper. What is this? Open it. Inside was a cashier's check for $200,000, exactly half of what Dad's estate had been worth after the debts were settled and the legal fees were paid. Jennifer had signed it over to me as part of the divorce settlement, keeping the other half for herself. Marcus stared at the check like he couldn't understand what he was seeing. His voice shook with disbelief and desperate hope. Sarah, I can't accept this. The restitution alone is going to bankrupt me. The lawyers, the fines. I'm not giving it to you, I said quietly. I'm showing it to you. This is what I got back of my inheritance. Half of what Dad wanted me to have, returned to me by your wife after she discovered what kind of man she'd married. I took the check back and put it in my jacket. You stole more than money from me, Marcus. You stole my father's last gift. You made me doubt whether he actually loved me. You erased me from the family history because you were too weak and too selfish to face the consequences of your own choices. Marcus was crying now, ugly, desperate sobs that shook his whole body. His voice was broken, pleading. Sarah, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. But being sorry doesn't change what you did. And it doesn't change what happens next. Marcus looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What happens next? I looked at my brother, this broken, pathetic man who'd once been the golden boy everyone admired, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfied. Not revenge. Just emptiness. What happens next is that you live with the consequences of your choices. You pay the restitution, you serve whatever time the judge gives you, and you rebuild your life with the knowledge that you destroyed your family for a gambling addiction and a few moments of feeling like you were in control. Marcus's voice was small, childlike. And us? What happens to us? I was quiet for a long time. There is no us, Marcus. You made sure of that when you decided I was expendable. 2 years have passed since that conversation in the parking lot. Marcus served 18 months in a minimum security prison and is now working as a bookkeeper for a small trucking company. He lives in the same studio apartment, drives the same beat-up Honda, and as far as I know, hasn't placed a bet since his arrest. Jennifer remarried last spring, a pediatrician she met through her sister. They seem happy. She sent me a wedding invitation, which surprised me. I didn't go, but I sent a gift. As for me, I used my half of the inheritance as a down payment on a house in Portland, where I started my own forensic accounting firm. I specialize in helping people uncover financial fraud and embezzlement. Business is good. People lie about money more often than they lie about anything else, and I've gotten very good at catching them. I don't think about Marcus much anymore. The anger that sustained me through months of investigation and planning has faded into something more manageable. Not forgiveness. I'm not sure I'm capable of that. But acceptance, maybe. And understanding that some betrayals are so complete they change the fundamental structure of your world. I learned something important during those dark months. Revenge isn't about making someone else suffer. It's about reclaiming your own power. It's about refusing to let someone else's weakness and selfishness define your story. Marcus didn't just steal my inheritance. He stole my faith in family, my trust in the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. But in taking everything away from him, his career, his marriage, his reputation, his freedom, I didn't get those things back. I just proved that I was stronger than his betrayal. Some people might say I went too far. That I should have been the bigger person, should have found a way to forgive and move on. But those people have never sat in a lawyer's office and heard their entire existence erased from their father's last will and testament by someone they trusted completely. I sleep well at night. My conscience is clear. And if that makes me the difficult daughter, well, I've always been comfortable with that role. That's my story. A tale of betrayal, investigation, and what happens when the quiet ones finally stop being quiet. If you made it this far, drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and justice? What would you have done in my situation? Don't forget to like this video if it kept you hooked, and subscribe for more true stories about the secrets families keep and the prices we pay for keeping them. Hit that notification bell, because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.